Hello everybody and welcome to another tutorial from Sound for More. It's Leo speaking. Today I'm going to give you an introduction on the Zen core synthesis, and I hope in this way that you can understand the power behind or how powerful the Zen core is. Before I start, I would like to remind my viewers to subscribe as it helps with growing the channel. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's press enter on the keyboard. Let's select the bank C. Let's select C16 as a scene. Let's use the dial and let's go to a scene which is initialized. Perfect. Let's click on single tone. You can see the type of the single tone is Zen core. Let's click on bank and let's move these two with the dial to user. As you can see, the tone is depending on what you have in your keyboard. You might have different tones if you work on it. In this case, I already recorded a previous user tone. Via sample, let's use the dial and move to something which says initial tone. And you will hear that piano sound. Let's press on the oscillator button, which is on the left side of the filter button under the synth controls. Okay, so you enter here the Edit Zen Core screen, and you should be on the oscillator parameter. First thing to explain is that Zen core has 4 different partials. Okay, you activate them up there, pressing on the on-off button like so. Be careful every time you activate them, you double the use of polyphony, of course, depending on the oscillator type, which we'll see in a moment. And you can select a different partial just like so. Okay, so you can make changes from one partial to the other. They are independent. And if you want to quickly copy the settings from one partial to the other, click Utility, and here you can initialize the tone overall. You can initialize the selected partial, copy a partial, and also edit the multi-sample, which I will show in another tutorial. If you select partial copy, you can say copy partial 1 into, for example, partial 2, press select OK, and it will do the copy for you. Okay, so let's go to oscillator type here. You have all this type of oscillator on the Zen core. So the first is PCM. Every time you change on one of them, the parameters will change automatically. So for PCM, you can decide which group you want to use, the internal one, the expansion, the sample, and the multi-sample. And as you can see, I usually change them. It changes the parameters which are available. For internal, you can change the bank, of course. And then you can select the different type of waveform for the left channel and also for the right channel. Again, you wouldn't hear any difference, and this is typical simple mistake to do. I have partial 4 selected, but the one which is active is only partial 1. So I need to go back to partial 1, and you can see that it is different. So let's activate different waveform for the right channel. Now, as you can hear, 2 waveforms. So when you press a note, is using 2 voices of polyphony. And if you have a partial, only active is only 2 voices for polyphony for 1 key. But if you activate 2 partial, it will be 4 voices. Okay, so remember that because the Fantom is 256 voices of polyphony. But it's very easy to run out of polyphony. Imagine if you have 4 partial, okay, which are on, and you have the PCM type, and you're using left and right waveforms. When you press a note, it's not using 4 voices because you have activated 4 partial. It's using 8 voices because it's left and right channel. Okay. Okay, let's go to oscillator type. We have VA, which is a numeric calculated waveforms to simulate really that analog type of sense. If you go to parameters, you can see you have saw as a waveform, square, and it's nice because when you have a square, you can choose a different pulse width down here. You can change also the depth of pulse width modulation, and also how fat the sound is. You can choose a triangle waveform. Let me reset this. You can select sine waveform, ramp, Juno, and variation of triangle and sine wave as well. The interesting one is super saw. And you can choose also the detuning for the super saw. And here you have the level as well for the oscillator, and you can change that, of course. Now, if I activate other partial, like so, let's say 2 of them, let's go to utility, let's say partial copy from partial 1 to partial 2, so they will have the same settings, okay? You hear straight away that the sound is getting thicker, of course. Now let's stick to only one partial active. Let's go back to oscillator type. So we have PCM sync. And when you have that active, you can see that you can change the wave number. Okay, so let's try. Very nice. Super saw. And if you go to the parameter, you can see it has selected the super saw there, which we already seen. And then if you select noise, you can see on the parameter that you have the selection of white noise. Okay, perfect. Let's go back to the VA type and let's choose why not that super saw. Now, other parameters. Let's go up here. The very top you have common parameters for the tone that you have selected. So the first one is poly and mono. So as the word says, if it is in poly, you can play multiple notes together. If it is mono, of course, you can't. So if you press a chord, it doesn't work. So you need to put it back to poly to have a chord. The next parameter allows you to simulate that analog feel, that feel of analog synthesizer. So it creates time variation on pitch and also volume, which will give you that effect of the tuning and imperfection. You can activate unison, and that will lay a number of notes for every, or voices for every note or key you press on the keyboard. Immediately gets thicker, but you need to be careful because it will increase exponentially the use of voices, and therefore will decrease rapidly the available polyphony. Now, if you want to see how many unison voices are activated, tap where it says to Pro, which you go in a different view, which it gives you all the parameters in a tabular way, and you can scroll up and down to change them. And you see here unison size 4 voices, but you can go up to 8, okay? But just be careful. Let's go back to zoom because it will really kill your polyphony. Particularly if you have multiple partial active and if it's stereo, so you very, very quickly run out of polyphony. Then you have your ADSR switch. If you activate that for each envelope, and you have an envelope for pitch, filter, and amplitude, then it will deactivate T2 or time 2 and the level 2, and you will be able to just use your traditional attack, decay, sustain, and release envelope. If instead you go back to common and deactivate that switch, when you go to an envelope, you see an additional parameter, time 2 and level 2 as well. I will explain that in a second. You have a legato switch, which when you activate it allows you to play legato between different notes, which is really nice. Then you can activate portamento. So it will move the pitch gradually to the next note, and you can decide the time. You can have it normal or only active when legato is on. You can have it based on the distance of the different pitches of the notes that you move, that you press consecutively or you play consecutively, or you can have the time as a constant. And then you can have the portamento start to various when the pitch actually is changing or when you press the next note. So it will move straight away to the top pitch of that note and then coming down to the next one. Now, let's move down to other parameters. I'm not going to cover structure. This is about how the different partials are combined, but I will dedicate a full tutorial for that because it's quite nice actually, but it deserves a full tutorial. So let's go down to pitch. This is where you can set the tune by semitone, by cent. You can also have a random depth for the pitch in cent, and this is where you set the depth for the envelope as well. So let's try. Actually, let's go back to common and let's deactivate that portamento and let's go back to pitch. Okay, fine tuning cent. And then random depth. So I'm pressing always the same chord. Every time I press is random, which you can hear. And then of course you have the envelope depth, which I'll show in a second. So let's go to the pitch envelope. This is the envelope which will change the pitch over time. You decide which point with this measurement, time 1, time 2, time 3, and time 4. And for each point in time, you set the level below. So you have the envelope depth, which corresponds to the previous envelope depth here on the pitch. So if you go back to pitch envelope, we can say maximum there. You can set the initial value, like so. Then you can say we have a bit of time, like so, and we leave the level 1 to 0. So it goes up immediately as a pitch, and then it's coming down. Okay, so nice and simple. Click on level 0, click Shift and Enter. As we know, press 0 and then OK, so it perfectly goes down to 0. And why not? Let's set the envelope to depth. But I want to show you that if you go to pitch, it's the same parameter. It is down to 100 there, as it is here on 100. Again, let's set this down to 0. Now, next you have a filter. Here you can select low pass filter, high pass filter, band pass filter, etc. And you can even decide the slope. You can set the cutoff frequency, the resonance. You have key follow for the filter and also the envelope depth as well, because it works exactly similar to the pitch envelope, but this time you have a filter envelope. Okay, it works exactly in the same way. And remember, at the moment we have only one partial active, but you can have up to 4. Next we have amplitude. You can set the maximum level, a velocity sensitiveness, the pan left and right if you want pan to key follow, and then you can also set the output for the assign and multi-effect. We also have an amplitude envelope as well. Next we have 2 LFOs, LFO 1 and 2. On this screen you can set the destination, so LFOs help you to modulate the destination. In this case you can set the pitch, filter, amplitude and pan as the destination. Let's set these to maximum for filter and let's play a chord. What it's doing at the moment is moving up and down, changing the filter, okay? Frequency. How do I know it is moving up and down? If I go to the next screen, for LFO 1, which I'm using, is using this triangle at the moment waveform. But you can change that. It can be, for example, random. You can set the rate there as well. But let's say sine wave. You can set the tempo sync switch on as well, which is nice. You can introduce a delay. So you see it comes in, and then you can also have a fade time, and then you can re-trigger based on key the LFO. Similarly, then, additionally, you have this step LFO additional mode. If I go back to LFO 1, you can see you can select it on, you can set the LFO 1 to step up LFO. And if you set it to step up LFO, you have a number of steps effectively, which you can set the level, but also the type of curvature. And I will explain that in a future tutorial. Similarly, you have LFO 2 and step LFO 2. And then you have an equalizer. You activate the equalizer for the particular partial, and then you can set it again for low, mid, and high, and also the mid Q, and also the frequency for each one, which is really nice. Next, we have these 4 metrics control, which are really powerful. The way it works is that you set which source will influence the destination. So for example, it could be breath or the modulation, and then you can say every time you receive modulation messages, change the cutoff frequency. And you can also set the sensitiveness positively or negatively as well. So for example, you could set up here to receive messages from the pedal and then change the cutoff by -44 as sensitiveness. So hopefully this gave you an introduction on Zenko. I hope you enjoyed. There is much more, and this is only one type of synthesis in the Fantom. Hope you enjoy and see you at the next tutorial. Thank you very much. Bye.